Hello and welcome to a new episode of New Old Cars TV. I'm your host, Andre Clemente. The 2001 model year brings loads of excitement to the BMW family, most notably the launch of the new M3, as well as many revisions and updates across the entire lineup, including the Z3, a car that outsold the Miata to become the world's #1 selling roadster in 1999. Now, the best way to experience the Z3's mid-cycle refresh is to get behind the wheel of the coupe, which not only comes exclusively with a new 3-liter engine, it also comes standard with more options than any other Z3 model. In particular, these sports seats trimmed in ultra-smooth Nappa leather, the same material found on the M cars. This particular car is spec'd with those awesome Style 42 BBS wheels, as well as aluminum trim and a power tilt glass moonroof that happens to add an inch of headroom. The whole idea behind the coupe is to create a more driver-focused offering of the Z3 by addressing the chassis rigidity issue found in the Roadster. Now, it's fair to say that BMW's efforts have paid off, at least on paper. Not only is the coupe 2.6 times stiffer than the Roadster, but it's now nearly as rigid as the Porsche 911. In fact, when the coupe debuted in '99, it was the most rigid chassis to ever come from BMW, matched only by the all-new E46 3 Series. And despite the added roof, the 3.0 coupe weighs only 33 pounds more than the Roadster and has slightly better weight distribution, as well as less aerodynamic drag and a retuned suspension. However, at nearly $40,000 as tested, it seems a little sparse in here. Now, you could attribute the simplicity to this car's driver-focused philosophy, which would be fine, except the Roadster didn't exactly score high in that department, especially when compared to its rivals. So, is the added rigidity enough to finally make this a proper driver's car? That's what we're here to find out on this episode of New Old Cars TV. Stick around.
We'll start with the focal point and pop the hatch, which, as a personal commuter, has just enough room for your bags and shoes. And yes, it'll fit your dog, as long as it's not a horse.
It's a great space. Beats the 911's trunk. And it's definitely easier to access than the 911's back seat, I can tell you that. But look deeper and your eyes will quickly be drawn to the hi-fi Harman Kardon sound system, which houses a large subwoofer, an amp, and is complemented by 2 mid-range speakers on the roof. Talk about a party in the back. Now, underneath all this carpet and plastic, you'll find plenty of insulation, which is good. Unfortunately, it also covers up the 2 rear shock towers, which is not good. You actually have to remove the entire rear interior to replace these shocks. Talk about an inconvenience for the track day enthusiast. But you know what? You got to look at it as sort of a rite of passage to coupe ownership. Speaking of inconveniences, there are a few small ones, like the steering wheel, which is non-adjustable, and the seats don't go very far back. Then there's the moonroof, which can't slide like a real moonroof. It merely cracks open a few inches. Lastly, you can't even roll the windows all the way down to rest your arm on the sill. For that, you can blame the roof, which is slightly taller on the coupe than on the convertible. That requires the coupe to have taller side windows, which is unfortunate because in order to save costs, the coupe shares the same doors as the Roadster. This means the taller coupe glass just sticks out. But let's be honest, if you want to stick your hand out the window and feel the wind in your hair, buy the Roadster. This thing's meant for the cones.
Und der Verfall gehört zu mir. Wie das Tageslicht zur Sonne.
So all this talk about chassis stiffness and chassis flex, but in order to demonstrate what that actually means for you as the driver, we're going to bring in the help of this car's topless twin. So the Roadster is obviously going to have more body roll thanks to its smaller sway bars, softer spring rates, etc. So we're not going to focus on that right now. The Roadster is a fantastic sports car. You might even be thinking, yeah, it's not as stiff as the coupe, so what? It's a convertible. All convertibles flex a bit, right? That is, until you get behind the wheel of, say, an S2000 or a Boxster S. Then you begin to wonder why those cars feel more composed than the Z3, especially near the limit or over rough pavement. Finally, you drive the coupe, and that's when it clicks. Every complaint that any road test editor has ever had about the way the Z3 behaves is due to this annoying chassis flex that BMW engineers simply could not eliminate from the final design. When you have a body that's flexing and twisting in the corners, anything that's mounted to the body will be flexing and twisting with it, such as the steering and suspension components, all of which are tugging and pushing on the tire as you're turning. From behind the wheel, this means a degree of inconsistent handling. It makes the car feel less predictable. It gets even worse over bad roads where there's plenty of bump steer. And because the Roadster's front tires aren't as planted as the coupes, they have less grip, so you get that mid-corner push, known as understeer. In fact, if you apply throttle mid-corner, all the car wants to do is push outward. And if you try and lift, it will not tighten up. You simply cannot use throttle to help this car rotate. In the coupe, you can actually use the throttle to help it turn. Overall, driving these two cars back to back really highlights how tight, responsive, and buttoned down the coupe is. It's amazing what a roof does. Now, as icing on the cake, the 3-liter cars get the same exact tires as the M models, identical size and all. That helps this thing generate the same grip on the skip as the M cars, even the M Coupe at 0.9 G. It's proof that the coupe chassis is rigid enough and has enough mechanical grip that it doesn't require stiffer M suspension to pull M level grip numbers. Now, it's no secret that the Z3 uses a cost-effective semi-trailing arm rear suspension pulled straight from the E36 318i hatchback, which needed the semi-trailing arm suspension because it's a space-saving design that allows the use of a flat floor. Pretty important for a car with no trunk. Considering the Z3 is part of the E36 family, it was a no-brainer to incorporate that space-saving setup in this tiny Roadster, regardless of the design dates back to the E30. But there are two problems with this design. One is that the semi-trailing links put a large twisting load on their mounts as they move, and the Roadster just isn't rigid enough to constrain this force. The coupe has the rigidity to handle this load, which is why the rear is more predictable and well-mannered than the Roadsters. The second problem is that it allows dynamic camber and toe changes when the wheels move up and down during hard cornering. This dynamic alignment change is what forces the wheels to lose grip. But on a positive note, the car's tail happy. You can pull spectacularly long drifts in this thing. Even with 90 less horsepower and the same fat rubber as the M cars, this has no problem roasting the rear tires. You know, you sit so far back, the seats are practically on top of the wheels that any change in yaw feels exaggerated. You can feel your body swing outward with the back end, as if you're at the end of a pendulum. It even slides back into place nicely. Unfortunately, you don't get the quicker steering or the extra front caster of the M cars, but it's not like this steering will give you anything to complain about. And that's the thing, while we all crave the extra performance and precision of the hardcore M models, there's something nice about having slightly more approachable limits. Honestly, this car rocks at the Skidpad. I expect to see a lot of these at the local autocross. But what about the track days?
Let's do this. Turn 1 is the only turn that feels a bit sketchy. There's a bit of lightness you get in the long, sweeping corners. This feels really stable on entry, but high-speed corners definitely make it feel unsettled. This changes direction so well, it's so immediate. This car's enough grip that I can keep the floor here between turn 7 and turn 8. Ass out of turn 9. God, this car sets so nicely. No need to downshift here. Just leave it in third. There's so much low end torque. No need to waste time shifting. Heavy braking, the rear end stays completely stable during turn-in. Final corner, you don't touch that curve. Finish line up ahead. Not bad for a bone stock Z3. The old M Roadster did a 217 at this same track in the hands of racer Steve Millen for a road and track test, though he was on the factory Dunlop all seasons. Oh, we're on summer tires. Directional changes are lightning quick. And turn-in is just as good, if not better. In most cars, when you first turn the wheel, there's this small gap, this moment of instability before the car begins to actually set into a corner. But in the Z3, that gap is non-existent. It plants itself instantly and charges forward. I mean, just look at these fender liners after one track day. Man, this car can lean like nobody's business. Honestly, body roll isn't always a bad thing. Just look at the Miata, which is notorious for body roll. But it's still easy to manage and has tons of grip. And in race spec, we learned it'll easily give the Z3 a run for its money. This thing might have been tail happy on the skid pad, but out here, when it's under full, constant cornering load, it has so much grip. That rear end felt glued to the asphalt all weekend long. Look, to have a car that sticks when you need it to, that can also slide gracefully when you want it, it's a thing of beauty. One issue that came up is lift-off understeer. It wasn't an issue on the skid pad, and it's nowhere near as bad as the Roadster, but lifting in a corner will just push the thing out wide. Best way to keep it tight is to rely on late trail braking. Really hold the pedal as late as you can and release it nice and slow to keep that front end pinned down, like we do here for turn 11. I out-braked quite a few cars today on these stock brakes. No fade. No engine durability or cooling system issues. You will notice a slight ticking from the lifters, but that goes away. It's pretty common on these types of engines when they see track duty. I'd add at least half a quart of extra oil, if not more, before you take it out on track. In the end, it's easier to dance with and is more forgiving than the M, yet it's stiff and sharp enough that it doesn't have any of the drawbacks of the Roadster. The 3.0 Coupe really hits the spot as a track day companion. Such a great power band for a street car. Rest assured, what the soft suspension gives up on the racetrack, it makes up for in ride quality. I mean, it can be firm at times, being a short wheelbase sports car, and the suspension travel is a bit limited, so it's not too hard to bottom out. But the ride is never jarring. It glides nicely over undulations, and it's honestly supple enough to daily drive and be comfortable. This is noticeably softer than the M model. In fact, this doesn't just ride nicer than the Boxster, it even feels more plush than the 996. Now that might surprise you considering the media touts the 911 as the perfect everyday sports car, but driving one will reveal a ride that's a bit stiffer than most prefer. Areas where the Boxster requires downshifting, the Z3 can remain in gear thanks to all of its low-end thrust. That's a luxury that the S2000 could only dream of. Although the Boxster and S2000 excel in other areas, such as the shifting department. Here it feels long, notchy, and
almost sticky in some gears. But when you're competing against the precision of these two shifters, there's definitely room for improvement. Then there's the transmission itself. While the gear ratios are spot on, you will be craving a sixth gear if your cruising speed is 80 miles an hour or more. On the upside, fifth gear keeps you in the power band on the highway for effortless tailgating. Sorry, I meant overtaking, not tailgating. I don't know why I said that. Velvety BMW smoothness that we all know and love is very present in this new 3-liter. Whereas the S54 is made of heavy cast iron, the engine in this thing is made of weight-saving aluminum. In fact, the entire 3.0 Coupe as a whole is nearly 200 pounds lighter than the M Coupe. So, in the end, what we have here is the Goldilocks of the Z3 lineup. Not only does it rival the grip of the M cars, but it's also lighter, it's cheaper to maintain, it rides nicer, and it costs thousands of dollars less. Plus, it's nearly as fast and as powerful as the old M cars. And then there's the fact that it's a low volume production model, so it still feels special, despite not wearing an M badge. Now, don't get me wrong, the M Division's S54 is one of the best engines BMW's ever made. I'd be thrilled to own an M Coupe. But with prices approaching $50,000 for similar options, the $38,000 3.0 begins to look a bit more enticing. After all, it's $5,000 cheaper than the base Boxster. Bottom line, for under $40,000, this is, without question, the ultimate driving machine.